So here's a look at the transmission. I'm gonna get this pressure washer, see if we can get some of this junk and grease off the transmission with it. I don't know how well it's gonna work. We're gonna do that before we use any sort of cleaner / degreaser. Man, that really actually worked really well. So, no cleaner, no degreaser. You can see how easily it knocked off that grease on the outside casing. Okay, so sorry about that, my battery died, but it should be relatively easy getting the rest of this off, and the inside as well, because it's really not, it's not super duper like caked on where it's like hard. It's actually very soft. So let me go ahead and get to work on that, spend maybe the next 20-30 minutes, or as long as it takes. It only took me a minute to do that portion, but I'm gonna flip the casing on the downside, but I'm gonna put a couple blocks there because you're not supposed to rest the transmission on the input shaft. So I'm gonna flip it over, try cleaning the outside, then I'm gonna get to the inside. And here's a look at the transmission afterwards. It came out really nice. That made my job a lot easier instead of using all kinds of degreasers and brushes. Whoever owned this car before did use some sort of brushes when they cleaned it. You can see all the marks in the transmission. Some of these spots where it's dark, I think it's just where the aluminum on the transmission has kind of gotten corroded, but it got very clean with just using that pressure washer. And it was only a 1400 PSI. I imagine with maybe like a 16 or 1800 would come off even faster. And on the inside, it got a lot of it off. There's still small traces here and there, but I think it'll be just fine leaving it like that. I can guarantee you that this LS transmission that's on there is a lot dirtier on the inside and even the outside. So it should be perfectly fine leaving it a little bit dirty on the inside. I don't want to spend a whole day just trying to clean this transmission off. I think it'll be okay like that. Now we're gonna get the LS trans pulled, get all the accessories put back on, like the starter and the rear mount bracket. I might change the seals on the B16 transmission, get the clutch put on, and then we'll get it dropped in. I'll give you an update in a little bit. One tip, this part I recommend always changing if you're ever removing a transmission and putting a different one on. It's that throw-up bearing release spring, because you never know when these old ones, sometimes I've seen the ends break off, and it's just a pain in the ass to get in there and just to change this release spring. So I always utilize brand new ones whenever I'm removing and replacing a transmission. Here's a look at that action clutch. This is very interesting. I've never seen a clutch disc like this before. This is the Stage 2 made for the 1991 Integra, which is the small spline B series cable. I intentionally got this one because I wanted to try something different. My competition clutch, Stage 1.5, still has a ton of life on it. So I'm just gonna set that one aside and keep it with this 92-93 cable transmission. I think I'm gonna possibly eventually get the synchros and everything replaced on this because it started grinding and going into third gear, so it probably does need an overhaul of some sort. It's an S1, but I think it'll be great for just a backup transmission. We got the new clutch installed. I also installed a new flywheel. I always like to use new flywheels with new clutches. I'll keep that flywheel with the competition clutch since those two went together, and it was brand new when I first installed it. Just something I like to do. It's entirely up to you. I think it's smart, especially with the new clutch material on the disc. So let's get the transmission on and let's start getting it ready. Well, I encountered a problem with the transmission. After I put it in, I was trying to bolt up the passenger side mount, and I noticed, let me see if I can show it to you. Use my light. You guys aren't gonna be able to see it, but this bolt hole, it is broken on the bottom. Looks like someone used too long of a bolt, so it pushed right into the transmission. Now there's an open hole there. This one, maybe you can see there, see that little bar in there? There was a Healy coil that was used on this mount, so it's obviously not as strong as the original one. This one seems perfectly fine. So I'm gonna have to back off the transmission. And so here I took the casing off the transmission. Just wanted to show you guys how you can see in there, see how it punctured through the casing. So unfortunately, I'm gonna need to try to find another casing, or just maybe even a 9091 LS transmission so I can use it for the housing. But I guess for now we're gonna have to throw the LS back on. I'm gonna get the clutch replaced real quick, put the LS transmission back on, and we're just gonna have to utilize that for the first event unless I can't find another transmission to replace that. But I'm thinking in the meantime that I'm just gonna send the transmission off. I was talking to, I don't know if you guys follow this person on Instagram called Night Grind Transmissions out in California. I asked him if I could send him the transmission for a complete rebuild / overhaul / check, just to make sure that everything is in good shape. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that instead of installing it, because I really don't know the full condition of the transmission. I did drive the car home and it was perfectly fine, but it has never been driven hard, so just to avoid any potential like gears grinding in second, third, whatever, then I'm just gonna take my time, spend the money, and get it professionally overhauled, so that way I have a fresh transmission to use, and it should give me plenty of longevity after that. So yeah, I'm gonna put the motor in, and I'm gonna have to eventually drop the transmission again. But I think that's well worth it, because if the transmission is fixed and no problems at all, it'll definitely be worth the effort of having to get in here and pull the transmission. So we're gonna get the clutch taken off for now. We'll save it for future use when the transmission is ready. Put the competition clutch back on, and let's get the motor in, see if we can get this car running today. All right, I got the LS transmission back on. Just a quick tip, whenever you're putting a B series engine into an EF, it's easier to have it at an angle. The reason being is when you drop the transmission into the chassis, you have the T-bar, which if it's straight up and down, it'll try to catch on the water valve, same with like the fuel filter and all these related parts. So dropping it at an angle kind of slides it in over here, and you can slide it right back down onto the rear motor mount. All right, we got the motor in, all the mounts bolted up. I'm gonna go ahead and start reconnecting the wiring harness, all the coolant lines, and I'm gonna see if I can't get this car started today. So I'm not gonna bore you with small details of me assembling everything, but I will get back to you guys once I get the car started.